Okay, so I'm quite used to giving speeches to big crowds of people, but it's normally in colleges and schools, first time in a place like this. And before I start talking, I just want to preface my remarks by saying Belfast is a small town, Northern Ireland, small country. And if anybody is in any of these photographs, or they know anybody who's in these photographs, and their recollection of what happened is different to my recollection, please feel free to tell me, because a lot of these things happened 30 years ago. And with time, you know, your mind can have a different recollection of what actually happened. So, with that, I'll just begin and explain. I come from West Belfast, and my very earliest memories are... Oh, sorry, I'll stand in front of the microphone here. My various earliest memories are really traumatic ones. You know, I grew up in a block of flats where, you know, it's just in front. It's South Link, it's called. It's actually the piece of waste ground where the two corporals were killed during that terrible incident at Casement Park, where they were dragged out of a car and killed. And that's where they were killed, just right beside where I lived, like, you know. But my earliest memory is 4 years of age during the hunger strikes in 1981. And we were actually squatting in a flat. We weren't renting it, we were just squatting in it. That's the way things were in 1981. There was a lot of that going on. And I remember looking out the window, and there's this place, his nickname was Agro Entry, right? It was an entry between two blocks of shops on the Andersonstown Road, and a British Army Saracen, like sort of armoured personnel carrier, was coming through it, and the soldiers were sticking out of the top with their guns, you know, watching around. This is at night time, and people were on both sides of the shops, and they threw petrol bombs into the armoured personnel carrier. So all the soldiers were set on fire, and they all ran out, and they were rolling on the ground, and people were using coats to put them out. They didn't even have fire extinguisher or anything. And I just saw this at the window. I remember seeing it, and I don't remember any noise or anything like that. It was just like, it's just a visual image in my head. And it was just totally bizarre, you know. And actually, I wasn't frightened or traumatized or anything, you know, at the time. I was just sort of fascinated because I had seen things like this on the TV, and there it was, you know, happening right in front of me. And then a few years later, we moved up to Lenadoon, which is a housing estate in West Belfast. And it was a great school, Oliver Plunkett's primary school. And we went on this lovely field trip to the Ulster Folk and Transport Museum, which many people here will be familiar with. And they have this kind of old town and like an old farm, and you can reenact the way things used to be 100 years ago. So we planted some potatoes and used manure as fertilizer and everything, you know. It was great crack. And so when we come back to the school, one of the teachers said, why don't we plant a wee potato plot at the back of the school and be a wee project? And so I thought this was wonderful, because we didn't have any real, there were no playground facilities or anything. Like, it was a very austere school, and all the huts, all the classrooms were like prefab huts as well. And so anyway, over time, I loved just going to the wee fence and watching these potatoes, green shoots coming up, and I was very excited to see, well, we're going to dig these potatoes up. It's going to be great. You know, we grew them ourselves. And then one Monday morning, I came into school, and everybody was all quiet, and it was very strange. I heard two of the teachers talking, saying that somebody had been shot dead outside the school at the weekend. And they were all saying, oh, this is terrible, you know, this is awful. And all, wondered, does any of the kids know who it was and whatever. I wasn't paying much attention. I was about 7 or 8, like. And but I went over to have a look at our wee potato plot. And like, it just didn't look right. Something, I thought the plants were dying or something. They had all this sort of stuff all over them. And so I went and got the teacher. I said, so there's something wrong with the plants and the potatoes. They don't look well. And he said, oh my God, that's that there's brain matter from the man who was shot. We're going to have to phone the police about that and everything. And so the police came up to the school, and I was really annoyed because they trampled all over the potatoes and destroyed them, you know, while they were collecting all this stuff for the forensic evidence and all that, and it's sad. It still makes me feel upset now, even thinking about it. That I was more annoyed that my RB potato plot was destroyed, than someone had lost their life. But that's just like one of the strange things about war. It affects people in different ways. And, for me as a 7-year-old, that was the effect. It was bloody devastating for me, So, but anyway, I went on through another couple of years later. My parents were very political, big Sinn Féin supporters and activists and stuff. And we were always going to marches. And there was one particular one on the Falls Road where Martin Galvin, who was a American guy, he was a lawyer from New York, was in charge of what's called Irish Northern Aid. He was collecting money for Sinn Féin and for people whose families were in prison and stuff. And there was a banning order against him. And so there's a big sort of propaganda thing. Sinn Féin smuggled him into the country through Donegal, whatever. And he was produced on this stage on the Falls Road. And there was hundreds of people there, kids and everything, And the next thing, the IUC moved in to arrest him. And it turned into a really, all of a sudden, very violent situation. Prams being thrown about, people's shoes scattered all over the floor and everything. And I've sort of had a bad feeling beforehand. I got this kind of gut instinct that things were going to be bad that day, And as I've gone on to work in photography and covered riots and different situations, I've had the same feeling, same gut feeling. So I've learned to trust my instincts since that day. But right in front of me, a policeman shot somebody dead. His name was John Downs. He was 22, a young man with a newborn baby. And he looked like a big man to me at the time, but I'm thinking about it now, he was such a young guy, as well, and a young wife, left widowed as well. And that's totally taken over her whole life now, that woman as well. She spent her whole life campaigning against injustice and all that, So, but his death was actually turned out to be one of the most iconic photographs of the Troubles. And this is sort of what got me into photography. I remember seeing the picture in the Daily Mail the next day, and it's actually taken by a man called Alan Lewis, who's become a lifelong friend of mine now, one of the real famous Troubles photographers. And the photograph was then used in all sorts of high court cases and more or less led to the reduction of use of plastic bullets. So, now they use much smaller, less dangerous ones, So I'm just going to put the photographs on a bit of a slideshow. And then if I see one, I'll just talk about it, about some of my experiences, So, yeah. I don't know if anybody, this has sort of become a bit of a meme now, this photograph, but this is taken about 2001, 2002, I think. And I always wanted to take one of these photographs of we called it a woolly faces picture. I always wanted to photograph, whether it was Republican or loyalists, because of, number one, the danger of it, of being arrested or whatever, but just photographing guns. Guns had a big, very sexy thing in photography, just the danger of it and stuff. So we'll see these guys again later on. But if you look at this photograph, I was blindfolded and taken to somebody's house in West Belfast and taken upstairs. And just the thing that always makes me just laugh about the picture is this is actually taken in a children's bedroom. And that white sheet over there in the corner is over a set of bunk beds in the room. So it's so surreal. These guys were there issuing death threats to people and issuing ultimatums to people to leave the country and issuing reading out people's names who were going to be kneecapped and all this, And there it is, in the juxtaposition of it being inside a children's bedroom, mind-blowing stuff, So anyway, I think if I click through here now, these photographs are going to start taking through. This is taken up in Ardoyne, where Damien is from. I just couldn't get over the age of these kids who were trying to set fire to this car. Look how young they were, And this policeman was working on the day. Look at this compared to the age of those kids, the danger that they were in. Okay, so now this photograph of the policeman on the ground, I'll talk about this a wee bit in depth here, and then let the other pictures tick on in the background. That policeman, he's wearing like body armor, fireproof clothes, helmet. Like the equipment that the police have is extraordinary now, and but someone dropped a breeze block on his head from the shops in Ardoyne. It's not that high of a drop, but I mean, if a breeze block falls on your head, and his neck was injured, so his colleagues put him on the ground, and these two policemen who were like working, they're sort of like paramedics, but they were officers with him, and they were putting him in a neck brace and trying to inch off his helmet millimeter by millimeter. And I'm kneeling down on the ground taking a photograph, and just as like the two chaps were saying there, when you're looking through a lens, you're completely in the zone. Everything else is moves in slow motion, And at that point, there was this like a rain of bricks and bottles coming down, over the shield wall where the policemen were. And the next thing, a little black something came over, something unusual. I'd never seen it before. Smoking, and the next thing, it just exploded. It actually landed on the policeman's body armor that was on the ground being treated by the paramedics. So everybody had to jump out of the way. They jumped out of the way, I jumped out of the way. And because I was kneeling down, for whatever reason, the blast went over the top of me and didn't hit me, but it sort of, I lost my hearing for a wee bit, But behind me, there were two people standing. One of them had his back turned. He was a radio reporter for Radio Ulster, and he had a backpack on with a laptop in it, and the shrapnel went through the laptop into his back, so he was injured. And then the other man on the ground was injured in the thigh, and he got a bit of shrapnel in it, really in one of the thick arteries in his thigh, so he was bleeding out. And luckily enough for it happened, there's actually an ambulance depot, and the ambulance guys came quickly. They got him in, and you'll see in the photograph when it comes around again, there's two guys wheeling him into the ambulance, and the man's legs all bandaged up. And his story is in a book that I helped to write one of the chapters of called Reporting the Troubles. Another book, Breaking Trauma in the Newsroom, where the guy explains what happened. He was taken to hospital, the Royal Victoria Hospital, where obviously they're just so well trained, and they were able to save his leg anyway, and he had a very, very serious injury, and his leg was completely full of shrapnel, nuts and bolts and stuff like that, And when they were looking at the X-ray in the hospital, and he said to the doctor, "What does it look like? What does it look like, doctor?" And the doctor turned around and said to him, "It looks like B&Q." So it does, That's I love that story because that's typical Northern Ireland humour in a very dark situation. And that guy said it really helped him, like, just to calm down, and he knew he was sort of in safe hands because the doctor didn't seem too worried, So, but anyway, awful sad as well. One of the ambulance men who is carrying the gurney into the back of the ambulance, his name was Michael Brett, and he was a very friendly guy with photographers. I get to know all the paramedics, the undertakers, police, firemen, the emergency services, and photographers are always standing about talking to each other. And he was particularly friendly with photographers, but he was really good at protecting the dignity of patients as well. He was also, he liked having a crack with us, but he was always admonishing us if he thought that we were encroaching on somebody's dignity in a situation like that, So, but unfortunately, his own son was shot in a sectarian shooting, and he was dispatched to go to save him, and he wasn't able to save his son's life, Gavin, which is really shocking, really horrible. And unfortunately, Michael himself died not long after that, and I don't think he ever got over it, So those are the type of situations that we find ourselves in, and it's a very, demanding job. And his story particularly is one of the ones that always stuck with me, because it's always the really good people that seem to suffer, in a situation like that, So, and also talk about the like the night that Lyra McKee was shot dead as well. She was an up and coming journalist, and I just happened to be staying with my in-laws up in Derry at the time, and we'd heard about this, rioting going on. It was very unusual for the amount of violence to be taking place at this particular time of year. And it turned out there was some kind of a documentary being made, and that may have contributed to the level of violence that was going on, but I couldn't say. But anyway, she was there, just doing her job and, bearing witness to what was going on. And she did like what a lot of people think is a good idea. She went and stood behind a police Land Rover, using it for cover. But, that is really the wrong place to stand. And I've learned that myself. And somebody was shooting at the police Land Rover. They're inside an armoured Land Rover with body armour and bulletproof vests and everything. She's standing outside. And from what I can tell, one of the bullets ricocheted off the Land Rover, just hit her on the head. And I was standing there myself, very close to it, 5 minutes earlier. And I was filming stuff with my mobile phone because we do video as well, and the battery went dead, and I had to just go and get another phone charger in the car. And when I went to come back to where I was standing, there she was dead. It was unbelievable. But the reason that I know it's not good to stand beside a Land Rover is those people from the Continuity IRA who had photographed 10 years previously. I was down in the Short Strand, covering sort of a riot between Catholics and Protestants on the Newton Arch Road. And I heard a clink of ladders behind the peace wall. I was on the Protestant side of the peace wall, and I had been on the other side many times before. I'd seen people climbing up ladders with guns, and they were going to shoot down, at the loyalist rioters or the police or whatever. And so we were standing there, just a group of media people, Sky News and BBC and stuff like that. And I just saw this guy, Celtic scarf over his face, baseball hat, blue gloves. Once I saw the blue gloves, I was like, oh God, this is not good. This guy's got a gun, definitely. And then I even saw the gun, and it's exactly the same gun that's in that photograph on the table, 38 caliber revolver, and I could even see just the cylinder with the bullets. That's how close I was to him. It was like maybe from the fourth row away from me here, and then I was like, well, if I can see that, it means he's pointing the gun at me. This is all things that are happening fractions of a second in your head. So I turned round anyway and went to run away, and I heard 3 bangs, and then I felt a big slap on the back of my leg. And I thought, God's sake, the police have shot a plastic bullet at that guy and they've hit me by mistake. It didn't even dawn on me that this was going to be me getting shot here. It just, when you're there taking pictures, you don't ever imagine yourself to be in that amount of danger, So anyway, I started walking away, and I could feel cold blood run down the back of my leg. And then I looked at my trousers, and there was blood run down the front of them as well. And anyway, it was lucky, very lucky. It just went through my thigh and didn't hit any arteries and stuff. And I was very quickly brought to the Royal Hospital. And I was off work for 3 months, recovering, and I thought it was going to be fine, but it was quite difficult being off work for 3 months. And very lucky that it was a staff job as well. I mean, if I had been a freelance photographer with no salary for 3 months, you couldn't pay your rent, you couldn't pay for your insurance, your car, you'd be homeless basically. I had a long time to think about all that while it was going on. So I'm just very lucky that I was in a staff job with a very good company, So, but one of the days near the end of my recovery, when I was able to walk, but I just wasn't able to drive a car, I'd heard that Bernadette Mikhalski was going to be giving a talk in a GAA club beside where my mum lives, and about the hunger strikes. So I just went down anyway, just to listen to her talking and stuff, And as I was arriving, I was getting out of the car with walking sticks and, loads of bandages and everything, and she came over. She was getting out of a car herself, and I know her daughter just from work that she does with Phil and Phobal years ago. And she came over to me and she just shook my hand and said, "Welcome to the I've Been Shot Club now." So now some people might know that she survived a very serious gun attack where she was shot in her own bath in her house. I think she was shot 5 or 6 times, with young children in the house and everything, But that was nice. That's something I won't forget, But I'm trying to think now. So at the beginning, we talked about me experiencing all those incidents when I was young. So when I was about 14, which is a very awkward age, it's being a teenager is a horrible age because you're not an adult, but you're not a child either, and you don't know what you're going to do. And I didn't know what I was going to do for a career. I thought I was going to be working in Curly's supermarket or something. I didn't have any aspirations to do anything or go anywhere. My life began in London and ended in Castle Street. That was a very small place. But during the Troubles, people didn't really travel outside the districts that they lived in because it was dangerous, And but anyway, my dad saw a thing in the paper, photography workshop, Belfast Exposed. So this would have been in 1989, maybe. So a real horrible time in Northern Ireland. 1989, there was a lot of awful stuff going on. And I think they had been around for a good few years at that stage, maybe 4 or 5 years. So anyway, I came down and down to the Donegal Street, the old office that they had. And I met these 3 people, Danny Burke, who's no longer with us, a fantastic man, brilliant teacher, very eccentric. And then Sean McKernan and Frankie Quinn. So, of course, they've become like lifelong friends as well now. And but yeah, they basically what they did was there was a few of us there, 4 or 5 people from different backgrounds, different parts of Belfast, Catholics and Protestants, and they just gave us a camera, said, "Here, take that home with you. Take photographs of your house, your family, your dog, whatever, and come back. We'll learn how to develop the film. We'll do a wee workshop, whatever, So, of course, it was. I wasn't really into the sort of social documentary thing or anything then. I was interested in the science of it, just of actually developing film and all that. And so it was magical the first time you drop a print into the developer and into the fixer and it comes up. It's just wonderful. It's amazing. It's like, magic. And I just thought that was great for the first few weeks we were doing it. But then we all started looking at each other's photographs and talking about each other's photographs. And people started coming in with these type of pictures because it just happened outside their door of their house, And anyway, it was a fantastic experience. And I don't know what any of the other people are doing now who did the workshop, but that was it. Like from that moment on, I was like, this is what I want to do for a job, And so the first place that I worked was actually on Phoblock, the Republican newspaper, because our neighbour happened to be the editor of the paper, and the job interview consisted like this. This is the strangest job interview I've ever had. He said, now, if you're there and you see an RUC man battering somebody over the head with a truncheon and he's your friend, what are you going to do? Are you going to take a photograph of it, or are you going to break the camera over his head? And I was like, I'm going to take the photograph. He goes, great, you've got the job. Brilliant. Okay. So, because some of the people who actually worked for them were actually on remand for assaulting police officers, But I can understand. It was very, very rough at the time. And so I was very young. I was like 16, shy. I wasn't going to be beating policemen over the head with cameras, And he actually he gave me this box. He said, now look, there's a few broken bits and bobs of cameras in there. If any of them are any use to you, you just keep them, take them, And he showed me this box. Everything was destroyed. The cameras, everything was just completely smashed to pieces. And that was all the cameras that they had. That they were all just used. So, now, I don't know if you saw there's a photograph of a little girl looking through a doorway. I'd love to find out who she is. Now, I took that about 25 years ago, and that house was petrol bombed in a sectarian attack up in, I think it was Ardoyne or the New Lodge, can't remember now. But I was just sent up to take a photograph of the house, and I'm standing outside. The house is all gutted by fire. The windows are all burnt out and everything. And I was just on my own. I wasn't with the reporter or anything at the time. And I was taking a picture of the house. And then the next thing, the door just opened a wee crack, and this wee girl was standing there sucking her dummy, and I couldn't believe it. The people were still living in the house. But, I mean, I suppose that's the way it was. That's your house, housing is in very short supply in Northern Ireland, and especially then. So, this picture here was a terrible thing. There was a sort of it was around the time of the Holy Cross dispute. Things were very, very bad up in Ardoyne, and that man, I think he was a sort of an alcoholic kind of guy, and he was out, just kind of shouting at people in the street. He might have been drunk or whatever, and someone lifted an ornamental horse head off the gate of the house that he was standing outside and just smashed him over the head with it. And that's what's going on there. You actually, in the photograph, you actually see the horse head sitting beside the wall. And thankfully, the paramedics saved him. But I mean, it was a very brutal attack, and just happened in broad daylight. It's the type of stuff that's kind of you're exposed to. You're a newspaper photographer. You're just there when it happens. So, I'm trying to think. Yeah, this one here, that's taken up in Ardoyne shops, and you can see the shops in the background there. I'm actually hiding inside somebody's hedge. That's, like the Homer Simpson meme. That was me with the camera there. So, let's see. I'll just flick through to another couple here. Oh, yeah. The one of Ian Paisley. I don't know if you saw that one where he was kind of giving the fingers. That's my favourite picture that I've ever taken. And it was during the election for the Assembly whenever the DUP finally went into government with Sinn Féin, and it was very surreal seeing that happen. Covering elections for years, you would never get anybody from Sinn Féin and the DUP in the same photograph. If you were in the count centre, they'd be standing opposite the ends of the count centre. It was a real thing, and then to see them sitting together at the table in the Assembly, Gerry Adams and Ian Paisley, was an unbelievable picture, and that was one of the most powerful pictures of the whole thing for me. But that one that I took, we were up in Galgorm Hotel, and it was Pancake Tuesday, and he was flipping pancakes in the kitchen and all. It was a really good set of pictures that day. But our editor-in-chief actually sent me an email saying he thought they were fantastic photographs and had gone all around the world. But that one, he was doing an interview with some journalists, and it was like 4 photographers sitting on a couch in front of him, and one of the guys said, "Give us the V for victory sign in there," and he was like this, and then he said, "And that's for you," to the photographer. And I took the photograph, but the other photographers who were sitting beside me didn't take it for some reason. I don't know why. I think they were just, even though we all knew him, we'd all been photographing him for years, but some people were just a wee bit close to him, and they just didn't think to take the picture. And I was like, God, I'm taking the picture. I'm taking it. That's, and I was very happy when he passed away. The Guardian actually used that photograph as a obituary picture, and because there's so many good photographs of Ian Paisley, like he was obviously one of the most photographed politicians in the history of the place here, and some of the photographs of him are just astounding, you can see there's one there of a purple escort car. That car is actually on fire, and the guy is driving it at speed, and he ended up crashing it into a police Land Rover. He reversed it into the Land Rover in an attempt to set it on fire. So I was trying to show just the crazy. Whenever people are in riots, they kind of lose their sense of control. This whole thing of wisdom of crowds. The crazier people get on, the crazier everybody else gets on, And this little girl here, that photograph was taken on September 11th, 2001, 9/11. That was her first day in school. Holy Cross, terrible. Just the whole thing was just awful. And we actually tracked that wee girl down recently there for the anniversary, and she has her own daughter at the school now. We did a lovely little interview with her, like, you know. So this picture is more of the modern stuff that we're photographing now. Things have switched in Northern Ireland now from sectarianism to racism, you know. And that woman is a Roma gypsy, and she's been intimidated out of her house in Belfast. And you'll see some of the other pictures that I have there, rad pictures from Dublin, from Coolock, which there's a place, an old paint factory, which is earmarked for refugees. And there was serious rioting down there last summer, and it was burned in an arson attack 2 or 3 times. And lots of young men end up going to prison for rioting because, you know, they're against refugees being housed in their area. Now, they do live in a very disadvantaged, poor area in Dublin, but the people who are going to be housed in that paint factory, you don't have any money. They're it's not their fault that the people in Coolock have had a bad upbringing, you know. So, yeah, I'll just say in conclusion that if I was going to do another job, if I wasn't a photographer, I probably would be a youth worker, and I would probably use photography in the work, because it does help people to come out of their shell. I was a really, really shy person, with no self-belief, self-worth. You know, now you wouldn't believe the places I've been to. Like, I've been in Montego Bay in Jamaica photographing publicity shoots for Bond films. You know, last week I was in the Oval Office, or 2 weeks ago, with Micheál Martin. And then as soon as I came home, I flew to Lebanon with the Taoiseach to visit Irish soldiers right on the border with Israel. You know, it's a fantastic job, but I wouldn't be able to do it without the people like at Belfast Exposed, who really give me the confidence and the belief to believe who I am, what I can achieve. And even in a very difficult circumstances, like where I grew up in West Belfast, you know, anybody can do whatever they want when you put your mind to it. So thank you very much. Okay.